First, the bad news. SAP Business AI won't generate amusing holiday cards, but it will personalize career paths for your people and let you know which suppliers are best, so you can be ready for the next opportunity. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI.
Bienvenidas al podcast Dos Bold Latinas. Aquí están sus hosts, Jatna Abreu
y Josibel Madera Vialets, dos latinas feministas born in Santo Domingo y in New York.
Passionate about Latina empowerment, Spanglish,
learning, growth, and so much more.
Hola, mujeres. So, en el día de hoy, we actually are doing something very different. I know you guys pretty much like every episode we have is just Rosie and I hosting it, but we decided to do something completely out of our comfort zone, where we're having Monse Velasquez, which she is part of the Latina Network group that we have here in Michigan, locally in Grand Rapids. And so she came in today to pretty much like interview us as Dos Bold Latinas, and just so that like you as an audience can get to know us and who we are. And so I hope that, you know, enjoy it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Monse so she can get us started.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. And it's not official until I start and say, hola, mujeres. ¿Cómo están? I am very excited to be here and host for your podcast, Dos Bold Latinas. Like Jatna mentioned, I actually officially met both of them at the Latina Narrators on the Go summer series that the Latina Network of West Michigan created. And they were my co-hosts, and we were able to know more about their podcast at this event. And just me having a curious mind, I wanted to know more of how they started and how did they meet, like what was the thought process in starting the Latina Network. And I jokingly said, hey, I should host one day and ask you guys all the questions. And here we are weeks later actually doing this. I'm very excited. And I do need to mention, this is raw, like, and bold. This is a raw and bold conversation. I have to give them a shout. I was like, do you guys want me to send you the questions in advance? They're like, nope, let's just do it like right now, like live. So this is going to be very exciting. So
I'm excited to talk to you, Mom. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me again. So let's get started. I'm sure a lot of your audience want to know who you are, how you started, and let's just start with a very simple question, Jatna and Rosibel. How did you two meet?
So that's a great question. Her and I had known each other, like about each other for years now, before like we actually started the podcast. So my husband is friends with her husband, so they play baseball together. And then like her, you know, Rosie's family owns a business here in Grand Rapids. Mm-hmm. So my family also goes to like, you know, her parents' business to like buy groceries and things like that. So we knew of each other. We just never really like took the time to connect until I was asked to host a conference for the organization that we work for. And, you know, I kind of asked her to join and see if she could be part of the committee. And then while we were going through that, like planning that conference, I, you know, just said, hey, Rosie, you know, we don't have anything like this in Grand Rapids. So, you know, I've always wanted to do something like a podcast or, you know, host something where we can talk about like our experiences and share stuff with like other women locally, like specifically, you know, Latinas or like women of color. And I want to do that. And so Rosie was like, oh, okay, great. And I was like, but I want to do it with you. And so that's kind of
no.
Like everything started. And, you know, I mean, we'll tell you more about it, like as you ask our questions, the questions, but that's kind of like how I remember it. So like, you know, feel free to jump in, Rosie, to say kind of like your.
Yes. So, and I also remember it as we started listening to this podcast of a girl out in Dominican Republic, and I shared that podcast with her. And I would just say like, oh, I love this and the topics. And as I'm telling her, hey, did you listen to that episode I sent you? She's like, yeah. And that's how she started telling me she wants to do this podcast thing. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And she's like, well, I want to do it with you. I'm like, what? why with me? What do I have to talk about? I'm a boring person. Like I have nothing to share. And she's like, oh yes, you do. And here we are, like almost 2 years later. Sometimes I have to hush because I get passionate. So I have loved this experience of how it started, because it really is empowering of two women the same age, which usually we see as being competitive, like, oh, I gotta be ahead of you. No, like I honestly think that we don't think like that at all. We're always trying to think of how to help each other grow. And that's what this podcast is about also. Like, hey, how have we grown and how can we share that so other ladies that we connect with also learn a little something from each other?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing. And Rosibel, I do have to add this, because that day when we were having the conversation, you had mentioned that immediately you did not like Jana. What were your thoughts about that? That it was like, oh, she's too perfect.
So I've been ever since high school, people thought I was stuck up because I wouldn't talk to them. But I was actually scared to talk to people. I just wasn't stuck up. Maybe I'm just gifted that people say I'm pretty. So I guess the pretty girls were used to being told they're stuck up. But I've always seen Jana as like, she's all into Wonder Woman, but I would see her as this Wonder Woman because my husband would say like, oh, she does this, she does that, she's ambitious and you're not ambitious. And I'm like, well, I'm not cool enough to be her friend. So I never thought I would be cool enough to be friends with a girl like her. So that was also
Jana, would you agree on your end?
Well, because yes, like I have heard, like, even at work or, friends and family, they do tell me that I'm kind of like intimidating. So like, there's like, when you walk hallways or whatever, people look at you and you have like, I want to be bold here, but like that bitch resting face, like for some reason, according to people. So I don't seem approachable. And so I can see how like, okay, she wouldn't want to talk to me because like you know what I mean? Like I look like I'm old dad.
Yeah.
So
but the thing is that I didn't see the whole bitch face thing, because maybe around people that like the closest people to me, like everyone thinks my mom's mean and she's not once you get to know her. Everyone thinks my husband's mean and he's not once you get to know him. And everyone thinks Jana's mean and she's not once you get to know her.
And full disclaimer, they are not mean. They're really fun to speak with. So
I had Jana's sister one time tell me, you attract people like Jana, like what, like you gotta check yourself. And I'm like, no, like, so I just didn't think that she was mean. I just thought I wasn't cool enough. Like, I just felt like she was above my league, I would say. Like, there's certain people you feel like, no, I'm not cool enough for them. But hey, with my confidence and everything growing in this podcast, I was like, I think it's cool that people actually want to talk to me now. So
yeah, that's awesome.
My mindset has shifted a little bit.
I told you guys this is all bold and raw information right now. So to follow up with that question, so you guys mentioned you guys listened to that podcast and then decided that you guys wanted to start your own. Jana, you wanted Rosibel to co-host with you. So what inspired you to start like the podcast? Like, were there any other details aside from that?
Yeah, so because we were hosting at our organization, like for the first time ever, like this conference for like young professionals of color, it just sparked, on me, and like listening to the podcast from that other girl, like from the actual like Dominican Republic, because she actually, her podcast and they're in Dominican Republic. But I felt like, well, in Grand Rapids, we don't really have anything like that local. Like, no, like, yeah, we have, like the Latina Network. We have like a bunch of like organizations that focus on like, people of color and women of color and everything. But I just felt like we were still missing something like a podcast, like a local podcast that where women could, we could invite local women to like interview them and they could talk about their business or, whatever it is, their career may be that we want to inspire other women with, so they know that, oh, I could do that too, or like, oh wow, like I want to support that business. So I just felt like we were missing something, and we wanted to create something where we could share our experiences with other women, but also like highlight and inspire like other women from the community so that, people could get to know them, and that, we all like, we're always empowering each other.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Anything on your end, Rosibel, that you want to add to that?
Yes, for me is creating that space to be real and to be vulnerable. Because I honestly did not see enough of that growing up. I grew up in this like overprotective bubble that everything was like perfect. I honestly thought life was like what I see in movies, and sometimes I still struggle with that. So I really wanted women to feel like, hey, we all go through it. And for me, it's like I would always just see only the superficial side of people, like all the good stuff of people. And now with this podcast, like people tell us, oh, like you guys share real experiences. And I'm like, I'm glad, because that's kind of like my goal, to be who I am. I've had some people tell me like, when you say I'm there, it doesn't sound like you. I'm like, maybe because I'm being the real me, because that's what I wanted to be on there. Even though I always feel like I'm the real me, but maybe I share stuff on there that people probably talk to me every day wouldn't think would be that way.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think that's what attracted me to your guys' podcast, is that you guys were just real. I listened to multiple podcasts, but not only was it local and Rosibel, I mean, I've known you for years, so hearing your input, and then like I mentioned, the other time we met was like the let's talk about failure. Like, you're right. I also am somebody who thinks that the world is perfect, but just hearing like successful Latina women like just talk about their failure and how they can grow from it is very inspiring. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Why did you guys decide to go with Those Bold Latinas? Like, were there other names in consideration? You guys are both laughing, so I want to know.
It's really funny that you asked that, because the first time we met to like think about names and to make sure that we weren't really like stealing somebody else's name, we did a lot of research. And there are other like organizations or podcasts that have like Bold Latina in it. But it's, it's slightly different than what we wanted to do. And I think, I can remember the names. I mean, Rosie can share them, because we literally, like the other day we're going through those things, and she had saved those notes. Like,
oh my God.
If we were going to be, this and this, and like we ended up with Those Bold Latinas. But the reason why we ended up with Those Bold Latinas is because we wanted to make sure that like it was intentional. Like, if we are going to share our stories, like our personal stories, and invite other people to share their personal stories, like we want to be bold about it. Like, if that's going to be the reality of things and what we want to do in our podcast, then like let's call ourselves bold. And there's two of us, so like there's two Bold Latinas. So Those Bold Latinas.
Love it. It's catchy.
All right, so this has given me time, as Jana speaks, to go back to my notes on my phone. And let me share a little list that we had from our first time. And if it's like a quick, if you guys want to know, like our first time we sat down was November 24, 2019. Like when we started.
Wow.
Like,
November 24th? That's all. Make it an anniversary day, okay?
This is what my notes say here on my phone anyways. But we had Entre Nosotras and You, another one called By JR, which Jana, our calendar still says like JR podcast reminders sometimes. Uniquely Nosotras. So those are like three names we had written on here. And yeah, so we definitely did go through it thinking of like, okay.
They were okay, interesting names or whatever, and they had like and we wanted also to make sure that it had like Spanish in it, just because we're Latinas and we are bilingual too. So just so people know that like our podcasts are, sometimes we do like whole English specifically, because we want other audiences to listen to our podcast, like for specific episodes, because it could apply to anybody. But other times, or most of the times, like we speak Spanglish, like a lot of Spanglish, because that's who we are and that's how we talk. So, it had like the Spanish speaking, part of it too. So
yeah, I love it. Wow, since 2019, and now here we are, 2021, Those Bold Latinas. So this next question, I'm very curious to know. When you want to start a new project, I feel like sometimes family and friends kind of can say, hey, are you sure you really want to start this? Are you sure you want to do this? So yo quiero saber, like, what did your husband, siblings, friends, parents think about you starting a podcast? Did they think you guys were crazy or always supportive?
Um, so on my end, nobody really thought that we were crazy about starting this. They just felt like, so my family, like my sister, like, and friends, they were super supportive. Like, oh yes, do that. Like, cause they know who, like how, the things I do and how I get like inspired and the things I do, like for the community, like aside from like my organization. So they're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like you can definitely do that and you'll do great. And then my husband just thought it was more of a hobby per se, like, okay, yeah, go ahead and do that. Like, if you want to have an extra thing to do, like do whatever you need to do. So I mean, he was supportive.
Yeah.
He didn't really see it as this is like a true, like, it's a business,
Yeah.
whatever. So that's kind of how it is for me. Like I'm happy to have like supportive family and friends that like are willing to also like come on the podcast and talk about their own personal experiences.
Yeah.
Even what we're doing.
Right. Okay. What about for you, Rosibel?
For my end, my son and niece think it's super cool. They're my number one fans. And then my husband is like, guys, they're like, okay, yeah, what do you want to do? He was here when John and I recorded our first episode at my house, and he was kind of like goofing around, like laughing what I say. I know deep down inside he's proud.
No, but I must say too that when we were recording our intro though, and we kind of shared it with him because we were like, okay, we need someone else's input on this. He was so not like wanting us to put the what was the portion, Rosy, that he was like white, like empowering, like that we are like too empowered Latinas, and he was like, why do you have to say that?
It's like because we are.
Exactly, like because we are, and he was just like,
yeah.
You don't need to say that. And it was super funny.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I'm laughing. He's right outside this office eating breakfast. So let's see if he doesn't say why he's talking so much. Anyways.
Okay. This is just me speaking out loud, thinking out loud right now. But you guys have to have a podcast with your husbands one day. I think you guys need to do that one day. Just saying, future podcast.
Okay.
So,
but yeah, and then my parents, they still don't know what a podcast is. They have my dad is my
Don Eduardo.
Oh my gosh, my mom, she still won't listen to entire podcast, like she can't focus. And my dad, he has like at the beginning super proud and so on. But many people in my family, they still don't understand what the concept of a podcast is.
No.
Drama, pero ¿y dónde que se ve eso? ¿Y dónde que se escucha? Like, like they think that we're like on YouTube or something. Like, don't go on YouTube.
Okay, that's something my parents would ask too. So I completely understand. Do your husbands listen to like the podcast fully, or just no?
No. And I don't think so. And if they do, I don't think they'll admit that they actually have a episode. Fine.
Oh, that's funny. Going along with that, like, can you guys share your most memorable experience in making the show together? I mean, you guys mentioned it's been since 2019. Like, it's August 2021 today. So,
I think for me, there's two times that it's not necessarily like the actual like episodes, like recording episodes, but it's like the one time where because we want to get out of our comfort zone and like do more events where like we can get women together, even if it's for whatever it may be the topic, but we just want to make sure that like we can connect women with other women. And so like we had our first vision board like virtually party that we had earlier this year, because we wanted people to like women to start like thinking about like, okay, what's your vision? What do you want to do for the year? And we had women attend, and it was even though it was virtual because of the COVID situation, like, you know, we enjoy that other women like actually supported us, and they also wanted to, like, you know, do those things for themselves, where like put their visions into a board. And then the second one I would say is the event that we just had in June. We never thought we would have something like that. Like, yeah, we envisioned something like that, like maybe, who knows, like a couple of years like from now, but never like, oh, we're gonna do it now. Let's just do it right now. And I'm like super proud of us that we were able to do that and connect women like you, and you know, in a space where like,
Yeah.
like, you know, like you could be yourself, and that you could learn other things from other women. So that's kind of like,
Yeah.
for me.
I'm gonna add something. I just thought of something. What you just said, connecting Latinas together. Just a side note. Yami, the one who, for that event, the self-care event, who did the decorate Vision and Vibes. So funny thing, she's actually going to be coming to town next week because we hired her at my company. So we're gonna have her photo booth. So it's just like that connection. So I do want to say, so thank you. Like, it does work. What you guys are doing is inspiring other women. And now we're going to have another Latina be part of a photo booth event that we have. So 3 events. So that's awesome.
See, that's what we want.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you gotta talk to Jami after this.
yeah, message her. So yeah, I'm gonna be seeing her next week. Yeah,
Cool.
what about for you, Rosibel?
I'm still trying to think because like I stole my thunder there. Like for real, but the self-care event there was a lot of things that happened behind the scenes. And not to be stuck up, but I could say I'm a badass because there were so many fires we had to burn out, and there were things that I did that I'm like, you know, like in the short time frame. Okay, it's like I saw like, okay, I know that I'm not disciplined, but when there's something to do, like I am very determined. Like I'm not gonna rest until this is done. And I really do care about how people feel after something. It's all about the experience. And it was just overwhelming to feel all the love and how like you said, how everyone just connected. And even for us, we have two upcoming events that came out of that self-care event with Loana and Yami and Kathleen, the photographer. So it's really been, it's still like that's the most memorable so far. But like of recording the podcast, I would say I don't know. I would just say like after just recording a couple of just thinking like, oh, okay, this is real. Like we're doing this. And something that still sticks to memory is like you guys people tell us like, oh, you don't sound nervous, nothing at all. But if you guys look at my microphone, it's covered in sweat from my palm sweat. So to me, I feel like every episode is still very memorable because I honestly do grow after each recording. If it's just us or listening to someone as a guest. So yeah.
No, estoy de acuerdo contigo. Like, this is my first podcast that I'm ever even part of, and hosting it, I'm nervous too. My hands are sweaty as well, and I'm not even the one answering the questions. So I te entiendo completamente. So now, kind of the opposite of that, what is your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it? It could be like individually or together as a team, but related with Dos por Latina.
I would say not necessarily a failure, but just like it just feels like sometimes it's hard to keep our audience like engaged. You know what I mean? Like there's people, like we know there are women that listen to our podcast, and like we do have our Instagram account, and that's how we continue to keep people engaged, you know, even when we don't have episodes out. But I just feel like it's so hard with like everything that's going on right now, like in society, and just like I know people have lives, right? Like, and they have a lot going on in their own lives. So it's really hard to keep like the content you know, like updated and like just like fresh for that audience specifically, and like thinking about like, okay, what may women be going through that we could potentially share. So again, not a failure, but it's just like hard. It's really hard to do that, to be able to like just continue to engage that audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of a moment of failure either. Maybe because I would see it as an opportunity to grow.
Stole it from your podcast earlier.
And between us, like I don't know. I feel like we're both kind of chill. There hasn't been any drama yet. Not even preparing for an event. Like, not even preparing for an event. I don't know, John. Now you remember us being like kitty fighting or like, oh, you little bitch or something. No.
Esta Rosy, man. Your husband's gonna walk in this room in a second.
So I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just feel like our personalities are perfect. Like that we like I think if it's like was something I did learn from John at the very beginning was like choose your battles. So I feel if there's maybe I'm the type that hey if I feel like this isn't gonna cause any confliction, then I'll probably just be the one like oh okay. But I don't know. I still can't think of like anything juicy to share with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in a way that speaks highly about you both. It's like you guys are very positive, and it's like you guys don't look at it as a failure, but just like an opportunity to grow and let's keep going.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Sure. We just have to like, you know, communicate, and like if we sometimes don't agree with something, you know, like, okay, fine, like let's find a different way to like approach that. So yeah.
All right. So was there ever a time that you both wanted to quit the show or individually and maybe even had a thought of it?
For me, not necessarily quitting the show, but sometimes it's hard to keep going when like you have your own personal things happening to you. So like I've gone like I'll personally share that what I was going through like earlier this year, like probably next year one of our episodes. Like I am planning to do that, but it's still too fresh that I don't feel like sharing that. But like when you're going to personal things like that, like it did hit me hard where I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like there was even an episode that when I was going through that specific situation, I had to ask Rosy to host one of those podcasts like alone, just because I didn't feel that like at that point I didn't feel the connection, and I just didn't feel like I was going to be engaged and I was going to do well. So I just asked her to, you know, just do it on your own. And then, you know, next time I'll join. But I just felt like when you're going through hard things, like for me, like it was just hard to continue to think about like, okay, what am I going to share with people in this, you know, next episode, or think about content, just because, yeah, like you go through stuff on your own and it's just like, I don't know, like, do I want to continue to do this? Like, I'm just hurting right now. So yeah, I have thought about it, but obviously like I'm glad I didn't go through with it, because Rosie's also there and she's always super supportive. Like, oh yeah, go ahead. Like, oh, I understand. Or no, let's do it. Like, you know, let's wait. Let's So, you know, things like that. So having someone like a co-host like Rosie, that she's like, she understands and she's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Like helps. So that's.
And I feel like there's a lot of pressure once you have, you know, this podcast that you have, you know, a good audience, that you kind of have the like the pressure is like, I have to post this podcast because the audience is going to be waiting. They're going to be waiting to hear this, but we're human. So, I mean, we go through each, you know, we have our own personal life. So thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to hear that podcast next year. So yeah. What about in your end, Rosibe?
So that's a good question. Like, oh, I've never thought about quitting or anything like that. But sometimes I do feel like, okay, am I still good enough for this to keep going? Because I don't know what else to talk about. So that would be of thinking of just sometimes self-doubts of not quitting, but it's like, okay, am I like still, you know, engaging enough, or, you know, am I still inspiring enough of when I speak? Because I also read in the article, it's like usually podcasts a year and a half later, they either, that's when you really know if they're going to keep going or not, because you start running out of ideas or inspiration. And I feel like everything of how Jana has gone personally and just being almost at 2 years, that if we have been able to overcome that, we could keep overcoming any other obstacles to come. Because,
exactly.
Exactly. And that's a way to show to people like, okay, yeah, we have stuff going on, but we're also already an example for other people out there. We got to keep going, and we're never giving more than what we can handle. So, and that's also a way for us to to show.
Yeah. And I think you guys are both really creative. I mean, having the self-care event and even the vision board party, you know, the rich, like you guys are very creative and engaging in different ways, not just by podcast, but nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I completely see where you guys are both coming. So going along with that question, the times that you felt like, oh my gosh, this may be too much, or I'm losing, like, I don't know, like the passion to think of new episodes, like what is your drive to continue the show? Like if you could say it like in a word or two. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, for me, it's more about like if I'm going through something, like there's gotta be someone else going through something like that too, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I feel like we will always be able to create content. I think for us, it's like the hardest part is like when to put that content out there based on what's happening, you know, like in the world at the moment. But there, like, I never really doubted that like we can create content just because I know that there has to be someone else going through this. Like whether, you know, if it's a mom, like we are moms, like there has to be another mom, like a working mom, being, you know, also an employee, like there gotta be someone else being as an employee going through this, or like as a woman, period. There's gotta be someone else going through that. So like I always feel like, you know, that's my drive. Like someone else is going through this, and so we gotta share those stories and our personal things and invite other people to talk about it, because these things are happening, and there's cases in which like we're not talking about those things. Like people decide not to share that with the public, or just like share those stories because they may feel like they're gonna be judged about it. And the reality is that like we're people, like we're human beings, and everyone goes through stuff, especially now. So that's my drive, that I know have gone through that or will be going through that, and we want to be able to help those people.
Okay.
Yeah, my drive is I don't know if it's so much the drive, but I just feel somehow I just get I don't know, I would say like this is just, you know, God inspired me or something, but it's usually like Jan and I would be writing back on each other on WhatsApp. We'll have, you know, we're always on WhatsApp having our conversations, and we'll say, or I'll say, let's have this. What do you think we turn into an episode? So it's like things that we talk about personally is like we'll turn into an episode. One episode we had, it was Jana, she gave me a devotional for women, and she's like, that sounds like something we read. And I'm like, yeah, that's where it came from, but I'm actually like feel a little bit like that. So I would like to turn that into an episode. So I just feel like things that like Jana was saying, things that are happening in real life. That's like our motivation to put content out there. Even like our Instagram, like I know I need to get better at posting, even though this week I've been pretty good at it. Anyways, what we post is like what we feel, because our Instagram page is like a motivational type of thing of like empowerment. I mean, Latina empowerment. So it's like if we post something happy or sad or, you know, like it's like
it's like a mood board. Like our Instagram is literally like our mood board. And we feel like if we're feeling that way, like there's gotta be someone else feeling that way too. And usually that's how it turns out to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all about being authentic, and that's how you guys just get your audience. Which relates to the next question. Like how do you hope to impact your audience?
So we just feel like if anyone learns from something from our, you know, experiences, or like any of our guests' experiences, or if we help someone avoid some of those mistakes that we've done, then like we've impacted our audience, you know, like our job is done. Like someone, you know, feels like that the content that we're sharing is relatable. Like, oh my gosh, like, yes, someone is sharing about this. Like I feel that same way, or like, oh, thank you for sharing that, because in the future, like I'm thinking about doing this, but like I just didn't know how to do it, and I want to avoid to make those mistakes or whatever it may be we had shared, so that we don't have, you know, they don't have to go through that as well. So
that just made me think of your podcast that speaks about mentorship. Like, you know, that's something that's like, okay, maybe I need a mentor. Like after hearing you guys talk about it, like maybe I need one for my own life. But yeah, what about for you, Rosibel?
Yeah, the impacts of, you know, we hear a lot of oh, la mejor versión de ti, be the best version of yourselves. But okay, but in what area? We could be our best. And I just feel like the impact would be of, I honestly, this is how I see it, but I don't know if other people see it this way is, okay, I listened to this episode and this episode is about finance or budgeting, or this episode is about getting ready for the holidays, or this episode is about self-care. This episode is about mentorship. So let me choose this area this month or some point in my life to be the best version of myself because I learned something from this. There was a nugget I was able to pick up from this. So like that's how I want to impact people, of that from each episode, they like there's something they walk away with or something actionable. Lately I've been trying to have like, oh, ask yourself this, or asking or having them write down questions, because it's like I want them to, okay, I listen to this, but what can I apply in my personal life to it, or my work life or my marriage life? So that's like the impact. My hope is that in every episode there's something little, because and impact of, and I used to get caught up a lot of like, oh my gosh, it needs to be for everyone. But then we have learned, or I have learned, as long as I impact one person is good enough for me. So when I get a friend text me, oh my gosh, I loved your episode, that to me, I'm like, oh, Donna, we impacted someone at least. So to me, it's good enough.
Yeah, I love that. Walk away with something actionable. I like that a lot. And I, again, been listening to your podcast. I feel like it always has me thinking of something I can improve in my life. So love that. I know you guys both kind of mentioned this earlier, but like, how has culture impacted your podcast? Like, why just Latinas?
So because one, obviously, like we're Latinas, right?
Right, of course.
Like, okay, we go through a lot of things that, like, we live in a different country, right? Like we live in the United States, and like I migrated here. So I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I know, Rosie was born here, but her parents are Dominican, right? Like she's from the Dominican Republic too. So there's that, like, that takes, that also like impacts the way we to do this. But also because, again, the community, we're in a community that it's, we have like diversity and things like that. And I mean, we do have organizations that support like, Latina women of color, but it's just like there wasn't that space where we could share like about our culture stuff and the things that we go through as like Latinas specifically. And with that, I'm not saying that like it's like Latina, we're catering to the Latina audience, but like some of the stuff we talk about, it could apply to any other culture as well. We're not like Latina exclusive, like we're trying to do, like even for our self-care events, like it wasn't necessarily just all Latinas, like there were other women that were non-Latinas, they right for us. So, just but it plays a huge part, right? Like just of who we are and why we decided to go with, supporting women.
Hay cosas que nos entendemos mejor by just being Latinas. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, I just look at it as the Spanish. And even though not all Latinas may speak Spanish, or not all Latinas may speak English, vice versa. But it's like, that's who we are. Like, that's our identity. And we just feel like that's, if we say, hey, our niche, who we want to reach to is Latinas, because that's who we feel we could connect and understand better with. And that's why. But like Jana said, we definitely have people that do not speak any Spanish or do not speak any English. Like we have people that live in DR that don't speak English. We have people here that I'm listening to and they don't speak Spanish, but they still are able to connect with us. So, that's where the Latina comes from. And of course, representation of, like, I feel proud to say this is a Dos Bo Latinas podcast. It's like, it's not, it just makes it more unique, I would say.
Yeah, I love it. If you guys had the opportunity to change one thing about your podcast, what would it be? I know it's a pretty direct question, but doesn't have to be a specific thing. Just
honestly, to change.
Yeah.
If you had the opportunity to change one thing about your podcast, what would it be?
That one's a hard question, because I feel like for us, I wouldn't change anything because that's just personally like that's just who we are and how we decided to put, you know, like ourselves out there and support other women that, you know, may look like us or, you know, just like have gone through situations like us. So like
Yeah.
you know, I mean, if I could change anything, it would be more like on the audience thing, like on like, okay, how many more women can we impact from this, right? Like, how can we reach more like audience, like more women out there that like need to hear like, you know, kind of like our stories and the guest stories that we, you know, we have. If anything,
Yeah.
that would be it. Like the expanding, like, you know, the audience. Like, how do we get that
Okay.
to women?
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely I was thinking. I'm like, I don't know about changing, but adding on, I would love it to have turned this into more of like a collaboration with a lot more Latina owned businesses, and you know, people just or anyone that would like to come on. Like I would like to add on, I don't know. I'm sitting here thinking, I would love it to be like if Monse, if you have one day that you've gone through something and you want to use this platform to share your experience, to inspire, empower, feel, have women feel like they're not left alone. I would love to have women to come to and say, hey, I would love to go on your podcast and talk about this that I went through.
I love
Because
that.
I don't feel like it's heard of it enough. Because it's like we're only two and we can only go through so much, and there's so much that happens to every woman out there in all aspects of life. So something I would love to add on is that to have women to feel open to come to us and say, I would love to share my experience on your platform.
Agreed.
So, ¿qué manera alguien les puede contactar? Like to say, hey, like I want to be on your show. Like, do they need to fill out a form? What would be the steps to do that?
Not necessarily a form, but we do have an email account, so a Gmail.
Okay.
dosbollatinas@gmail.com. And then we also have an Instagram account, which is @dosbollatinas. So they can send us a DM and say, hey, you know, like I'm so-and-so. I have a, you know, a story I want to share on your podcast. If I could come on as a guest. Yeah, we're happy to, they can connect with us like either through Instagram or our Gmail account. And we're happy to set up a meeting and talk about, okay, let's see how, like where this goes.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. I feel like I'm going to keep that in mind, and definitely if I know of any other Latinas that have, you know, things to share that can impact other Latina women, I will definitely keep that in mind. And right now, Jana, that you mentioned your Instagram, I do want to give you guys a shout out because I was looking at your bio and you guys have like the link tree where it talks about like how you can start your podcast. And one of my questions were going to be, what advice will you give other Latinas trying to start a podcast? But you guys are ahead of the game. And I love how you guys already have a podcast on that. And also like have the recommendations on like Amazon Finds and what application you guys use. And I just thought, wow, like you guys are, you know, not afraid to have competitors and are open to and want other people to have more podcasts. So follow their Instagram page. You will see all that information there. And aside from that, what other tip would you guys give to new podcasters like that are wanting to start a podcast?
Personally, I would say, you know, go for it, because at first you're going to feel like, oh, like, can I really do this? And like doubt yourself, but like, girl, you can do it. Like you can do anything you can put your mind to. You can definitely do it. We were there like a few years ago and look at us now. So
yeah,
I would say just do it, and know that anything you have to share, like it's important to share. So
yeah.
by all means, like go ahead and do what you gotta do.
Yeah. Okay.
The advice is if you're feeling doubtful, or you have anyone telling you like, oh, okay, well that's just something for you to waste your time, because I did get told that, I forgot about that at the beginning, like, oh, that's like, oh, pa tu pasa el rato, you know, like I just felt like they were telling me like that's not important, like, oh, you're doing this podcast, like that's not impactful, like, oh, you know. So it's like, you know, and I told you, I'm like, you know what, that makes me want to do this even more and better.
Yeah.
So if the advice is that you get someone kind of like, I don't know, I don't know what type of vibe to call that, I'm still not sure, but if you feel some type of way, just that should be your drive to actually do it, and not to show off, but that means that you actually do have something to give. Like if you
Yeah.
and the advice is like, okay, you're like, okay, I want to have a podcast. I don't know what. It's like, think about what do you love talking about? What do people come up to you to ask you about a lot?
Yeah.
Turn that into, it's like, if you're already giving and talking about a certain topic and you're passionate about it, then that's what you should go for. It's like, don't overthink it. That would be my advice. Don't overthink it. Just do it, because you will get better with time the more you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I think it would be better for somebody to try something than to not try and regret not doing it. So yeah, definitely.
And you would always have that what if.
Yeah, the what if. Yeah, definitely. So I did attend your self-care event, and I'm just curious, are you guys looking to have more, host more? I think they were very helpful and very fun, and the decoration was amazing.
Yes, we are planning to host more events. In fact, we're thinking about doing, there's a local organization called Affinity Mentoring, which I'm a board member of, and also a mentor for, one of the kids that are in the program. And they have an event coming up called Cuentos y Comidas. And I want to be able to host that as Dos Latinas, like host maybe even like it could be in person, but also it could be virtual. So we're still thinking about like how that's going to look like, but it's going to happen in October. And then the other event we want to host too is either going to be in December or January, but it's an actual like in person, if obviously COVID allows us to do that. We do want to host the vision board party again. Again, whether it's virtual, we would love to do it in person because we just want to connect with people. But we are thinking about hosting that event. And yes, next year in the summer, we are thinking about doing another event related to self-care again. So just stay tuned.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Well, that's good to know. So you guys heard it. There will be more events. And lastly, I just want to say to the audience, stay connected. Check out their website, dosbolatinas.com. You guys have awesome merchandise, which I do want to give a free mug, Latina definition mug, to whoever messages you guys on Instagram first. So whoever's listening to this podcast right now, if you're listening to it, just message them and they will let you know if you're the first person that is contacting them, and you will get a free Latina definition mug, and you guys can give me the mailing details and we can work out those details. But yeah, it's a really cute mug, so make sure you message them. And it's been a great time here interviewing you guys, and thank you for sharing a little bit more about who you are. Any other comments you guys would like to share to the audience for them to know you guys better?
No, just wanted to say thank you, Monse, for taking the time interviewing us. We never really thought of having someone actually do that for us, and we do it all the time for other people, but never had like the actual, opportunity to have someone else for us to share with someone else like our story and everything we do and how we do it. And for the people the audience just to stay connected. Like you said, we have our Dos Latinas Instagram account. So at Dos Latinas, our email is dosbolatinas@gmail.com. And like you said, our website is dosbolatinas.com. So if you guys want to connect with us or just stay aware of like what's happening or our events and things like that, just like follow us and we are happy to, connect with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on is that thank you for all the love that we have received from the community of Dos Latinas. Monse, thank you so much for doing this. Like, you're so fun to talk to. Like, I'm like, oh, she will be perfect. And just love to see of how everything has just been falling together.
All the puzzles start falling together. Yeah.
Yes. And as one of the first things that you experienced was how Yami, she reached out to us from Vision and Vibes. So guys, if you live here in Grand Rapids, she'll be here at your event, Monse.
So she'll be here. She'll be here next Sunday, the 29th, and also like for an event on the 1st and the 2nd. So yeah, contact her if you have anything. Yeah.
I want to give a huge shout out to her because that's really like what this community is about. it's like I never thought we would have someone reach out to us saying, I love what you do and I want to connect. It's like, oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
that's what we want to keep doing with other people. And we started doing that at the beginning of this year, is that we reached out to other Latinas in the community to say, hey, we want to interview you because we love what you're doing with your business or just you as a person. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
Here, I had my daughter join me like half an hour ago here.
I was gonna say, like I mentioned in the beginning, it is like all bold and raw conversation right now, and we're doing this call through Zoom, and she has her daughter, and I love it. It's just so authentic, and it's great. But all right, well, thank you for everybody for listening. Hasta la próxima.
Bye.
Ciao.